All right, so let's start with question number 1. And remember, guys, it's okay not to remember how to do some of this. That's all this assignment was for, was just to give me an idea where you're at. There are some prerequisite skills that I'm hoping you're good at on this. There's some skills on here that if you're really good at, it'll make your life easier later. But it's not like we're not going to go through things and you'll survive. You know, you just might need a little extra boost when we get there. But then there's other things that, yeah, you better know this now. Otherwise, we got some review we got to do today. So that's all this is. Don't freak out if there's things on here you didn't remember. So number 1, y equals 3x squared plus 5, and all you had to do was draw a little sketch. The main thing that you got to remember on this, what does the plus 5 and what does the 3 do? Do you guys remember doing that stuff? Like, do you remember what does a graph of just y equals x squared look like? What is it? What's x squared? What kind of shape? Starts with a P. It's a parabola. That is your standard operating procedure parabola. Vertex is 0, 0. A parabola. All x squared graphs like this, they're going to be a parabola. This is going to be a parabola. It's going to be just like this. The question is, what does that plus 5 do? And what does the 3 do? By adding 5, what does it do to this shape? Moves it up 5. So it takes this whole graph and it just slides it up 5. So instead of my vertex being at 0, 0, it's now up here at 0, 5. What does the 3 do? Does anybody remember when you multiply by 3, what does that do to the graph? It's actually what's called a stretch. It's a vertical stretch. If you think about taking this parabola and stretching it, right? So if I take it and I stretch that thing vertically, just like that, what's the overall essence that looks like it's happening? Like, what changed? Doesn't it look like it's going up faster now, like the slope changed? A lot of people think it's really only affecting the slope. In all reality, what it's doing is it's stretching it by a factor of 3. So for us, what it ends up doing is it ends up looking like a skinnier parabola than it was before, but that's because it got stretched. Right? The point that was here is now up here. You know, that's all that happened. Make sense? Kind of remember doing this last year? A little bit? So the next one, same idea, y equals 4, x minus 2 squared plus 1. And guys, don't worry, even if you talk, the microphone's right here, they're not going to be able to hear you. So don't get stage fright and like not want to talk and answer questions, because they can't hear you anyway. They can only hear me, unless you really yell. All right, so what's the plus 1 going to do? Up 1. Thank you. What's the minus 2 on the inside going to do? If this is an up or down shift, what's the inside minus or plus do? It's left or right. And remember, the left or right movements are always backwards. So a minus 2 is actually going to be a shift to the right. That's going to be a right 2 shift. So that parabola that has that vertex at 0, 0, that vertex is not going to be at 0, 0 anymore. It got moved up 1 and right 2. So now it's over there at 2, 1. What's the 4 going to do? Same thing the 3 did. That's the stretch, right? So that's going to take that and make it look like it's going up faster, and that's going to be that vertical stretch. So it's going to look skinnier. This is stuff that we are going to do a ton with this year. We're going to do a whole chapter on nothing but graphing this year. And it's all trig graphs. It looks complicated when you first look at it, but really it boils down to this. If I can show you what a standard graph looks like, and you know how to graph a standard graph, well then adding 1 and minusing 2, all you do is shift it over, over 2 and up 1. It's the same graph at that point. And if you know the 4 just stretches it vertically, it just makes those graphs super, super easy. So if you're not great at this, I'm not that worried about it because we're going to do a ton with it, and I guarantee you'll be great at it by the time we're done. If you're already really good at this stuff, what's it going to do when we get to that chapter? It's just going to make your life that much easier, right? So you already kind of know what's coming. All right, number 9. I'll bet you there's a few people that struggled with it only because you didn't know what it was asking you to do. But once you see the answer, you go, oh, I know how to do that. That's easy. What's the only thing they want me to do? It's a 4-letter F word. That's not 4 letters, that's 6. Foil. All you do is multiply it out. Just multiply it out. I would do these two first. I'd leave that 7 out in front. And then foil. X times x, you got what? X squared. You're going to have a 4x. You're going to have a 2x, which makes 6x. 2 and 4 make 8. Yes? And then what's the only thing left to do? Distribute that 7. So your final answer is y equals 7x squared. Oh, we got 42x and a 56. Anybody right now going, I don't know why I struggled with that before. Like, I know how to do that. That's easy. I'm a 5 when I gave myself a 1. And it's just because they didn't know what they were asking. It's fine. Good with this? Cool. All right. Here's where I really am crossing my fingers. I need you being decent factorers. What's that factor into? What two numbers multiply to 4 and add up to -4? Come on, what's the answer? X minus 2 and x minus 2. Here's something that I love doing, and I'm going to do this a lot with you guys in class. I want you to rate yourself right now. 5 being, I'm awesome at this. Like, you don't need to talk at all about this. You might as well let me make the answer key because I got this. Flashing up a 1 is basically the equivalent of flashing up a different finger towards me. Like, dude, I am awful at this. Like, the heck with you. I have no clue. I ain't doing this because I don't know how. 3, I kind of done a little bit of this, but I'm not good at it. I always mess up my signs, whatever. Flash just a little gang symbol at me of where you feel like you're at. You can hide it if you want. Like, how are you feeling just in general about factoring? All right. How about number 17, where it said x squared plus 5x minus 14 equals 0. They wanted you to solve this, but what's the best method to solve this particular quadratic? This one's factoring all day long. This is easy. How's this factor? What's this factor into? What two numbers multiply to 14 and subtract to get to 5? 7 and 2. Signs have to be different. Bigger one's positive. Bam! What's my answer? X equals -7 and +2. Solving quadratics is kind of where you guys ended up last year, right? There's three very, very good methods of solving quadratics. Factoring method has a lot of good things going for it. Number one, is this a long process or a very simple process? This is a quick and easy process. What's the problem with the quadratic formula? Or sorry, what's the problem with factoring method? Does it always work? No. Not all quadratics can be factored easily. And just because a quadratic can't be factored easily, does that mean there's no solution? Like this one says, what two numbers are multiply to 14 and subtract to 5? What if that was a 6? Are there any numbers that subtract to 6 that you know of that multiply to 14? I don't. Does that mean they don't exist? No. There are two numbers. They're just ugly numbers. There's probably some square roots involved. They're just nasty little weird decimals that do that. So the odds of us factoring and basically guessing and checking, which is really what the factoring method boils down to, is guessing and checking, isn't it? Are we ever going to guess that random square root number? No. So we have to have a backup method. What's the best what's the most popular backup method that works all the time? If the factoring method is going to fail you, what method could you use every single time? Come on. It's to solve quadratics. There's a formula involved. I can't give you a bigger hint than that. The quadratic formula. Anybody remember the quadratic formula? Okay. Anybody remember what's inside? There is a 4ac, but there's something first. B squared minus 4ac. This quadratic formula, x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That is something that you are going to need. In this class, trig is notorious for making problems look super scary. Like there's going to be problems. I could tell you to open your book to a certain page, show you a problem, and there'll be a little vomit that'll come up in the back of your throat. It probably won't come out, but you'll definitely taste it kind of thing. Like it is nasty looking. But on the inside, what the problem really boils down to, it's a teddy bear. It's actually a super easy question. It might boil down to solving this. Like, that's an easy question, isn't it? I can make a problem that is actually exactly the same process, exactly the same numbers, look insanely scary. But if you know how to solve this, then you know how to solve the other one. There's going to be problems that might boil down to this, but it just looks worse. But then there's going to be problems that are going to require the quadratic formula because they don't factor very easily for you. I'm not saying you're going to need, there's not going to be a whole assignment where quadratic formula is the way you have to solve everything. It might be that you can factor, but when you get to number 23, fine, I'll use the quadratic formula for this one. And there might just be a couple throughout. This is something you're going to need to know. Okay? Are you going to use it a ton? No. But it's that fail-safe method that you absolutely will need. Now, most of you don't know, but since you're enrolled in my class, you are actually part of my math cult. Okay? Now, I know a lot of people, cults have a bad rap, because there are some bad cults out there, and I don't recommend getting in all cults. Especially if they make you drink Kool-Aid or they want you to, worship some weird, those are probably bad. My math cult, you're good. What do all cults do? Huh? What do every single cult, no matter good or bad, what do they all do? What's the one thing they all do? Guess. Huh? They all chant. They all have weird chants that they all like to say, right? I'm the same way. I want you guys to chant with me. So once in a while, I'm going to make you chant the most weird things. Like we're going to chant today the quadratic formula. So you're going to, we're all going to say this together as a big group, like in unison, like it's choir class, like we're going to sing together. And it's just going to be negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Kind of has a little rhythm to it. Ready? And you're not too cool for school. Open your mouth and you can do this. Okay? All right, here we go. Ready, set, go. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Again. Ready, set, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. A little faster. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Let's see if you can go faster. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Faster. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's probably a little too fast. Make sure you know the quadratic formula, okay? Okay. Uh-oh, my battery's running low. I got to go quick for these guys. Okay. What do we got? This one, y equals 81 x squared minus 16. Anybody factor that one easily? It does factor. Factors just like x squared minus 16 would. That's nothing more than a difference of, what's this factor into? X plus 4, x minus 4. So what's this going to factor into? It'd be 9x plus 4, 9x minus 4. So then my final answer is when I set these both equal to 0, when you minus the 4 and divide by 9, you get negative 4/9, and then you'd get positive 4/9. Those are your two answers. Sound good? Are we feeling a little bit better now than you were when you were working on your own? Some things that you were just confused at what they were asking, I actually know more than I thought I knew. Okay. Here is something, if you don't know how to do this, you better learn by tomorrow. How do you simplify that radical? You're going to need this for tomorrow's homework. Guaranteed. You can do it that way. You definitely need to break it down. Okay? Got to break it down into parts. 8 and 7, you could do 2 and 14, whatever. 8 breaks down into 2 and 4, 2 and 2. Now, what are you looking for? You need a pair. I got a pair of 2s, which means I can pull a 2 out. That 2 and that 7 don't pair up, which means they get stuck back inside. So there is your answer, 2 root 14. Yeah? Easy? Something you're going to need. Like the first section tomorrow when we start talking exponents and exponents things, and then you're going to get to the homework. You're going to see a bunch of scary looking radicals. You just got to simplify the radicals. So I'll bet you every single person got number 33 wrong. Anybody think they got it right? What's the only thing you got to do? How do you get rid of that squared? Great. Simplify that square root. What's the square root of 8? You're wrong. The answer is not 2 root 2. You're close. It's plus or minus. What's the square root of 9? It's not 3. It's plus or minus 3. Don't forget that plus or minus, especially when you're solving equations. If I gave you a problem like b squared equals 16, what's the answer? Plus and minus 4. You can do it by square root, or would it be okay if I just subtracted that 16, brought it over with the b? Is that legal? Does that factor? Doesn't that factor into b plus 4, b minus 4? So you're going to get both the positive and the negative. You have to find all those solutions, okay? 37 should have been pretty easy. I don't really care about that one right now. What's the only thing you got to do? Combine like terms? What's the answer? Come on. This is where you guys talk. What's the answer? Yeah, 11 minus 3i. Just combine like terms. That's an easy one. Does anybody remember how to complete the square? X squared, 6x, and the 10. I actually like the completing the square method better than the quadratic formula. The benefit of both is they work all the time. Do you need both methods? No. You need one. If you're really good at the quadratic formula, then go with it. I like this method better than the quadratic formula because I think it's faster. All this is I'm going to pull a number out of thin air and make this something that factors beautifully. Half that number, which is 3, square that. 9. But if I add 9 to there, I have to add 9 to there, right? The nice thing is this will now factor really, really nicely. What two numbers multiply to 3 and add up to 6? 3 and 3, or x plus 3 squared. Over here I have a 19. How can I finish this? How do you get rid of the squared? You just take the square root. So over here I have the square root of 19. If that was a number I could simplify, I would. Got to remember my plus or minus. All I have to now do is bring that 3 over as a negative 3, and there are my two answers. Negative 3 plus the square root of 19, and negative 3 minus the square root of 19. Will you get the exact same answer if you use the quadratic formula? Yes. I like this method better than the quadratic formula. Do you have to know both? No. Pick one, whatever works for you. Okay? All right, we'll stop there.